you have to start with some humor. So there was a woman on the plane, and she was reading her Bible, and the man next to her looked at her and said, "You don't really believe that stuff, do you?" And she said, "Yes, it's the Bible." And he said, "Well, what about that guy that was swallowed by the whale? That can't be real." And she said, "You mean Jonah?" "Yes, I believe that happened." And he said, "Yeah, how could anybody possibly survive that many days inside of a whale?" And she said, I don't know, but when I get to heaven, I'll ask him." And he said, "Yeah, and what if he's not there?" She said, "Well, then you'll have to ask." So my talk today is personalizing the infinite. And what that means is that, I'm gonna take this off so I can move around here. What that means is that we have an opportunity to, yeah, it's on, thank you. To be in awareness of ourselves. That if we want to personalize the infinite, that we know the infinite is that divine energy that is everywhere present. That is, if we want to personalize that, we have to have awareness of ourselves as part of this universal energy, right? And so in order to do that, we have to have awareness of ourselves. The more awareness we have, the more consciousness we have about who we are and what we're doing, then the more connected we are. We're always connected, but the more awareness we have of that universal presence of oneness. So, in other words, the more aware we are of spirit, the more we have accepted the idea that there's an infinite number of possibilities available to us. There's infinite number. And we see a small amount in our human personality. But when we open to that divine, there's unlimited number of possibilities. So the more work we do to be aware of that, to hold our consciousness there, the more powerful we become, the more we can manifest and bring those possibilities to us. Ernest Holmes says, "You are already a spiritual being." When the mind understands this and embodies this essence, that which you are in the invisible will become more apparent in the invisible. So the more awareness we have, the more we're connected, and the more we have that expression of universal oneness in the world. And so another way to explain this is to draw this imaginary line. And that this end of the line is right here where we are today. It's where we are, our conditions, our beliefs, our understanding of life. And over here is the universal presence, that place that is unlimited opportunities, unlimited possibilities. It's that place of oneness, of divineness, of love and wholeness, of unity. It's the allness and everything. And so what's in the middle between here, the infinite, and what right here, this is our work. This is our curriculum. Because this is where we have to develop that consciousness and develop that awareness of oneness with the unlimited. So this is the work that we have to do. So Charles Fillmore says, I looked up, what does infinite mean or universal mean? Charles Fillmore says, that which embraces all. It is that which is boundless, immeasurable, and inexhaustible. God is infinite and eternal. And so God never changes, right? But our concept of God changes. And I don't know about you, but I grew up Catholic. And so my concept of God was a masculine being that lived in heaven, right? And that if I was good, then he granted my wishes. If I wasn't, not so much. And I was always making deals with God, I'll give up candy if I can pass this test, or I'll give up going out if something else happens. So I was always making these deals. So it's important as we evolve over time that we consciously evolve our idea of God. And so Reverend Lloyd Strong developed a technique that called the sacred software upgrade. And so we move from our awareness, just like we upgrade software, you go from a 1.0 to a 2.0, we upgrade our awareness of what we think God is. So in those early days, to me, God was remote. God was removed. God was unattainable. So when I do that upgrade, so now I don't believe that anymore. Now I know that spirit is everywhere. God's not remote, spirit is everywhere. God's not removed, spirit is ever present in the sacred moment. God is not unattainable, God is within me. So I make that upgrade from one version to another, to a new version. So what happens is those feelings we had of God from the early days stay with us until we learn to change them, until we learn to upgrade them. So that's why it's important for us as we progress on our spiritual evolution that we make those changes, that we have that awareness. The great Christian mystic Meister Eckhart taught that the highest concept of God was no concept, simply because any concept was a limitation on the unlimited nature. In other words, you can't describe the unlimited. It's hard to describe that. But that doesn't always work for us in our spiritual growth. So what we want to know is a deeper understanding. So there are 3 faces of God. And in traditional religion, especially in the West, we've accepted the existence that the outer God stands above and apart from the world, just like what I was taught in Catholicism, that God is outside and stands apart from the world. And that's what the West, here in the West, that's the form in religion, that's what we have been taught. And that view is not wrong, but it's incomplete. To focus our attention completely on an outer form of God makes it remote, does not make it accessible. And we become victims to something that we don't know if it's going to work or not. We don't know if we have a connection or not. So a lifestyle dedicated to the outer experiences causes us to feel our prosperity is always at the effect of someone else. It's our employers, it's the economy, it's the government. And it seems beyond our control. So that's the outer face of God. Then there's the inner face of God. And that the religious traditions, especially in the East, have suggested that the presence of God is an inner experience. That it's not an outer experience, but it's an inner experience. And it's turning away, that belief is turning away from the world and completely going within. And that idea is not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because if we turn away from the world, we're not looking at the conditions of the world. We become hermitized. We become a hermit because we're only concerned about ourselves. But when we look at the world, we see the conditions in the world. So the inner face of God, we get in the habit of believing that we can only find happiness and peace away from the world. And I used to think that that was enlightenment, to go find a cave. Anyone else want to find a cave? In the early days, I thought that was it. You would go be in a cave somewhere or on top of a mountain, and you didn't need anything. But that's not true at all, because we need each other. And that's the third face of God. There's the outer face, the inner face, and the one God. And the highest teaching of the greatest traditions, and this is what the Fillmores learned, this is what Ernest Holmes learned. They were all students of Emma Curtis Hopkins. And this is what they studied, is that there's one God with both inner and outer faces. And what's important for us to realize is that each God has its own demands. The inner God requires us to know who we are through personal introspection. And the outer God requires us to express who we are by taking action in the world. In other words, the inner God wants us to know something. The outer God wants us to do something. But to live in the expression of the one God is to know what we are doing. Right? It's to have that awareness. It's to know what we are doing. So we are conscious of our thoughts, of our behavior, of our actions, and our beliefs. When we have that upgraded experience of God, then we wake up and say, how do I want to show up in the world today? Am I going to be a victim to what I read in the news? Or am I going to be the presence of light? Am I willing to shine my light for greater good? Am I going to be sad at whatever thing I don't have in my life? Or am I going to be empowered by standing and knowing something greater for myself? Carolyn Mace, author and mystic, she says the power originates behind your eyes, not in front of your eyes. Once power becomes visible, it evaporates. We've trained, our human personalities are trained, and if you look at the world is all about the struggle for power in the outside world. But when we know our true power, when we know what we have in the oneness of God, that's our connection. So our thoughts are instruments of creation as much as our words and our deeds. And then we see that reflection in all that we have around us. Become conscious of the quality of your thoughts. Become aware of what you're thinking. Catch yourself in your thinking. Notice what you're telling yourself each day. When we judge something, judgment anchors us to that person. Judgment anchors us to that condition. And we're in a really challenging time right now because it's so easy to have judgment about things that are happening. And so to hold light to it, I just like the prayer, so beautiful, this prayer practice here, that we hold this light with you, that we hold the light that something greater is possible, that something greater, there's infinite possibilities, and that is possible right here and right now. And so we hold this light, we know this truth. Emma Curtis Hopkins says, the pains and discord of human experience are not sent of God, but they do indeed stand as tests of how much God we have. God didn't send us the challenges, but the challenges are there to test how much do I believe? What am I believing about the presence and power? How am I living that in my everyday life? How am I expressing that in my everyday life? And that's some of the things we're going to talk about in class this afternoon. I hope you'll join us after the service for prosperity principles. So that's what we want to focus on. That's where we want to put our attention. Emma goes on to say, we can train our faith by proclaiming to every sign of trouble that we do not believe in it until we are in a sphere of certainty. That we do not believe it until we are in a sphere of certainty. We think thoughts along the lines of truth and bring forth delightful circumstances and charming. I could use some delightful circumstances and charming people, couldn't you? So we create that, we become that, we are that. The more we are that, we present that to the world, and that's what we attract. So I thought, it's easy to share a concept or a principle, but I want to put it in action. So I'm going to share a story. And this is, next month will be 3 years in my condo. And so I want to tell the story how that got to be. So 2 years before I got a condo, I had the inspiration that it was time to move. That my husband had died some years ago. I couldn't stay in our house. I had to sell our home, and I moved to an apartment with the intention of I was going to stay there a year or two and figure out what to do next. Well, in a blink of an eye, 7 years went by. And you know how that happens? Time moves so fast. 7 years went by. Now all of a sudden, it occurred to me that it was going to be 7 years. And I went, it's time for me to do something. I'm going to move. So I started telling everyone that I was going to move. I had no plan. I didn't do anything about it, but I told everyone, I won't be here long, I'm going to move. And so then I got the inspiration, I better start cleaning out my closets, because that's a big thing when you have to move, right? Anybody moved lately? That's a big thing to do. So I started cleaning out my closets, a dresser here, a drawer, desk drawer here, whatever I could find, I started cleaning that out and giving those things away. Or if it was big things, I'd sell them online, and I started giving them away. I found something called Buy Nothing on Facebook. I see some nods. Buy Nothing on Facebook. When you have something to give, you post it on Facebook in your neighborhood, and people come and pick it up. I would have a row of items outside my door that people would come and pick up. I didn't even have to go anywhere. It was the greatest thing ever. And it didn't matter if it was a set of earphones or a book or whatever. Somebody wanted it. Somebody could use it. And I put their name on it and put it outside my door, and they'd come pick it up. And that's what I started doing. And I probably did that for about a year. But the first step I did was I declared I'm moving on. So that was my intention. And I knew that I wanted to experience, I didn't want to be in an apartment anymore. I wanted to have ownership. I wanted to be somewhere where there was more friendly neighbors that really cared about each other and kept the noise down and didn't smoke where they weren't supposed to smoke and all of that. So I had a vision of what I wanted. So the second step was release emotional baggage. What do I need to let go of? Not only was I letting go of my physical things, but my emotional things. I have to let go of the idea that I can't afford to do this, or that I won't be able to, or all the doubts that come in when we're making a big change, right? Anytime we're making a big change. I had to release any low-level vibration that I was stuck in about uncertainty, because there's a great deal of uncertainty. The third is to visualize the outcome. So I was visualizing myself. I was packing away things that I knew I wanted to take and letting go of things I didn't. I was visualizing myself. What do I want in a new space? I know I want light. I know I want a garage. I know I want to be a place where there's flowers and beauty. And so I started visualizing what that was. I created my own prayer and affirmation, and that's the next step. Create your prayer and speak it out loud. Say what it is you want. And I would say, I accept my new home is revealed with ease and grace, with light and love. And so I just kept affirming. Well, so all of this went on for probably 2 years. And I just kept telling everybody I was moving, and people gave me the names of realtors, and I looked in, you know, different neighborhoods, kind of just looking for what neighborhood would I want to put in. And then finally, inspiration came just out of the blue when I least expected it. Friends that had moved recently, they gave me the name of their realtor that they just adored. She became a friend of theirs. And I said, okay, well, I'm just gonna call her and talk. And I called her up and I said, I don't know if you can work with me, but here's what I want. And I told her everything. And in a 1-hour conversation, at the end of that hour, she repeated back exactly what I wanted. And I knew she was a match. I knew she understood what I wanted. And I said, there's no hurry. I don't know how long this is gonna take. And it's okay. So we started looking and really didn't find, there's always something that just didn't quite fit, whether it was the location or the backyard, or I didn't want to open my bedroom drapes and see the condo across the hall, you know, across the yard. I wanted some freedom, some privacy, some space, and I wanted to. We looked at places that I just looking at the roof, you could see that a new roof was going to be needed. So we just kept looking. And one day she called me and she said, there's a unit that came available and we need to go look at it, because this was 3 years ago. How the housing market was hot, everything was going fast. And so she made an appointment to go look at it at 1 o'clock. And at noon, it sold. And she said, can we come look at it anyway? And so we went, and I drove into this complex that was filled. It was June and there was flowers everywhere. The trees, the bushes, there were flowers everywhere. It was green, it was beautiful. And so we went and we looked at the unit, which was perfect for what I wanted. It had not been upgraded because the person had lived there a long time. It had not been upgraded, but the bones of it, what I wanted. And the light coming in and the patio and the trees outside was just what I wanted. And so we looked around and then we went to the car and I said, this is where I want to live, but here's the thing. I can't compete with people paying thousands of dollars over asking price, because that's what they do. Is like, remember that time? I don't know if they do it anymore now. But if the house went on the market, they would pay thousands of dollars over asking price. I said, I can't do that. I said, what I want is somebody that doesn't put their house on the market. They don't want to put their house on the market. They don't want to go through that trouble. That's what I want. And she said, okay, let's see what happens. So she talked to the realtor in the neighborhood and told her, hey, if anything comes available, let me know. 2 weeks later, my realtor was in Cabo, but she called me and said, there's a unit available in that complex and my associate is going to take it. So I went and I looked at it, and it was a couple that they were going through some health challenges. They were moving to be closer to their son, and they didn't want to put the house on the market. And so there were three of us that went and looked, and it was exactly what I wanted. And it had been upgraded beautifully, all new kitchen, new bathrooms, new carpet, everything had been upgraded. The patio looked over this little green area. It was beautiful. So, of course, then fear struck. Like, ask for what you want, and then it shows up. Can I have this? Can I really have this? I had worked through my doubt. I had worked through my fear. And so I did that. I prayed with my practitioner. I did my work. And so she's said, okay, you need to make a decision soon. So I said yes, and it was an asking price that was in my range. And so, but fear has a way of hanging on. There was still a little bit of fear for me that I could still get out of this when I have the inspection. So when there's an inspection, you can still get out of it. Nope, the inspection was clear and free. There was minor problems. They had agreed to the change, to repair the things they needed to repair. And so the realtor and I were sitting in the living room, and all this was waiting for the inspector. So we're walking out to the car, and my book that I had written that year was Soul Musings. And there's a copy in the bookstore, it has a picture on the front of a hummingbird. So a hummingbird is a really powerful presence reminding us of the presence. So now I have no out. This is my home. Okay, I'm trusting. And so we're walking out to the car, and she's looking up, and what are you looking at? She goes, there's a hummingbird following us. And I look, and we're walking to the car, the hummingbird was above us, following us. And she said, that's crazy. And I said, no, I understand. Come to the car with me. And I handed her a copy of my book. And so that was my sign that I was on the right track, that I was in the place I was supposed to be. One other thing, when I was getting ready to move, what I was wishing for were plastic bins. You know, plastic bins, you can do so much with plastic bins for storage. And I couldn't buy a lot of them. I had a few, but I didn't want to buy a lot of them. And so when her associate had taken me to see the place, we went into the garage, and in the garage, they said they were leaving a full-size refrigerator. They said, do you want us to get rid of that? No, that's okay, you can leave that there. And they said, oh, there's a lot of stuff in here. If you want us to get rid of anything, we'll get rid of it. There was shelving across the wall, and the shelving was filled with dozens and dozens of plastic bins. It looked like the Container Store. It was like I had my own Container Store in the garage. I could have any plastic bin I needed by just pulling it off the shelf. So it was like these signs, Spirit gives us signs all the time. So it was one other sign that I knew I was moving in the right direction. Then give thanks. So step 5, let go of the attachment to the outcome. I had to let go along the way. I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to get this or not. I don't know if it's going to be this year or 5 years from now. And let go of the outcome. That's so important for us to surrender and let go, because then we allow the possibilities to come forward. And then give thanks. Gratitude is so important. I gave thanks every moment. I was giving thanks for the process, for the practice. So there are so many opportunities. Insert your challenge or opportunity that you're going through into my story. Take those steps and use that for whatever you're going through. Go through those steps of declaring and acknowledging and letting go and developing prayer and surrendering and being grateful for every step of the way. Do that. That's how we engage in that one life, in that divine infinite presence. That's what's ours to do. So each one of us is responsible for allowing that spiritual being that we are to express through us. We allow Spirit to express through us each and every day. So would you repeat after me these affirmations? Spirit is right where I am.
Spirit is right where I am.
I embody all that is spirit.
I embody all that is spirit.
The freedom of spirit is my freedom.
The freedom of spirit is my freedom.
The power of spirit is my power.
The power of the spirit is my power.
The presence of spirit is within me.
The presence of spirit is within me.
The strength of spirit is my strength.
The strength of the spirit is my strength.
And the joy of spirit is my joy.
The joy of the spirit is my joy.
So let's take this into meditation. Take a breath. Just receive all that has been given here today. And connect to that divine breath. Connect to that infinite presence of love. Allow that presence of love to move in, starting at your heart. See that love pulsating in your heart. See that love radiating through your body, through every cell, fiber, tissue, gland, organ, and bone. See that love radiating. See that love radiating outside of you, flowing into the room, expanding into the presence of each person, till this whole room is filled with light, divine, infinite light that is oneness. And this light goes beyond this building, it goes into this community. It goes into the city, into our county, into our state, into our country. We fill it with light. We know that this light encompasses the globe, that this planet is surrounded with light and love. And so what I know right here and right now, I just give grateful thanks as I know that this oneness that is God, this infinite presence of good is realized right here, right now, in this very moment. There is no place where God is not. So God is that all-encompassing, everlasting, eternal source of good. And that there are infinite possibilities available to us. Infinite possibilities of good that are waiting for us to receive. So we open our arms, we open our hands, we open ourselves to receive this goodness right here and right now. I'm so grateful for God's graciousness. I know that each of us, as we leave here today, we take this knowing with us. We take this expansion with us, and we live in this awareness of oneness. Thank you, God, for this and for so much more. And so it is. Reverend Dr. Edward Gilhume said, "You have an innate ability to love and create. You have the power within you to become passionate about whatever you pay close attention to. When we become interested in something, life responds by igniting passion, excitement, and enthusiasm within us. So I know you are the light, and that amazing possibilities are open to you.